Welcome to Saturday Night Church. So glad you're here and enjoying this good service at the neighborhood. This is Generosity Weekend at the neighborhood, and we're going to be ending our service with an offering, a generous expression of worship with our finances. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit this service. So glad Teen Challenge is with us. This service about principles of generosity. Over the last 3 years, I've been talking about principles of generosity, and up until this weekend, we've looked at 8 principles of generosity: the principle of the heart, and the principle of honor, the principle of humility, the heaven principle, the have principle, the harvest principle, the house principle, the holes principle, and tonight I want to add the habit principle. The habit principle. For generations, mature Christian believers have been in the habit of giving. They get the instruction from the Apostle Paul's teaching in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, where Paul writes these words in verse number 1. Now concerning the collection for the saints, he's just been talking in chapter 15 about the resurrection and the fact that Jesus has defeated death. Jesus is alive. Oh, death, where is thy victory? Oh, grave, where is thy sting? And then this sudden shift in gears. Now concerning the collection. Collection is part of our faith. For generations, mature Christian believers have understood that giving has been a habit in their lives. Concerning the collection of the saints, on the first day of every week, each one of you is to put aside and save as he may prosper. First day of the week, you put money aside for the house of God, for the kingdom of God, for the needs of this world. On the first day of the week, it's a habit. You do it this week, you do it this Saturday, and then you do it next Saturday, and then you do it the Saturday after. It becomes a habit. Dictionary.com describes a habit as an acquired behavior pattern followed until it becomes almost involuntary. It becomes such a regular part of who you are. You just come to Saturday night church, you come to the weekend, and you worship with your means, with your wealth, with your finances. Charles Duhigg, in his book, The Power of Habit, says there are certain habits that are keystone habits, and when you do them, you reap dividends in other areas. When you exercise, I'm told, when you exercise, you change the way you're eating. Exercise makes you look at food differently. When you exercise, you sleep better. When you exercise, you become more productive during your waking hours. It's a keystone habit that affects other things. The habit of giving affects other things. One of the biggest things it affects is your heart. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 21, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. How do you get your heart right? You start putting your treasure in the place you want your heart to be. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. You see, when you get the habit of giving, the heart principle kicks in, and suddenly your heart lines up with the things and the ways and the purposes of God. I've got a problem this year with inverted sweaters. My wife has inverted all my sweaters to see if I actually ever wear them. Pray for me. Keep praying, please, please, please. But this sweater that I'm wearing today is not a problem. It's not an inverted sweater. You see, my wife understood something. She knew that this year I would wear this sweater at some point. She knows I really like this sweater. This sweater is neat. This sweater is soft. This sweater is cashmere. I wasn't going to not wear it all year. When your heart is in the right place, everything else lines up. The priorities aren't inverted anymore, and you walk in a blessing that you don't have when everything's inside out and upside down. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Our treasure, friends, is meant to be in heavenly things. And so in a moment, we come forward and we receive your offering. My wife and I are in Victoria this weekend. We are attending the General Conference of the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada. But Generosity Weekend matters to us. We've prepared our envelope. We've prepared our offering. We're giving. We invite you to give too. Let me tell you this story. Share it with you. I heard it at the graduation exercises of Horizon College and Seminary this year. December 19th, 1972, Eastern Airline jumbo jet took off from the New York airport, and they had a lot going for them. They had an experienced crew, a crew with a level of experience that's seldom ever seen in one airline, one airport, one airplane. 29,700 hours was the flight experience of the captain. The first officer had 5,800 hours of flying experience. The second officer, 15,700 hours of flight experience. This crew, flying crew, the pilots were experienced operators. 15 crew members on the flight, 163 holiday travelers, December 19th, making their way down to Florida to celebrate Christmas in warmer climes. They flew out of New York. The first 2 hours of the flight were uneventful. They're approaching the Miami airport, and with their final approach, and the pilots went to pull out the landing gear, and a little green light went on the airline dashboard, and the little green light indicated that one of the wheels was locked down, was not functioning the way it should be. Pilots thought that's probably just the light that's the problem. They went, they pulled the light out, then they pulled the light bulb out, they went and found a new light bulb, they put the light bulb in, but getting that sucker back inside of its socket and in its proper place where we could find out if it was working turned out to be a huge challenge. They ended up putting the plane on autopilot, got permission to circle around the airport for a little while, and while they were doing that, one of the pilots accidentally hit the autopilot throttle, and the plane began to go down and down and down, and the air traffic controllers called in and said, "Is everything okay up there?" And they said, "Yeah, everything's going fine." Didn't realize that as they were working on the little green light bulb that their plane was losing altitude. Finally, one of the pilots said, "What's going on here? We're doing something. We've lost altitude for the last 5 minutes." They'd set the altitude at 2,000 feet. For the last 5 minutes and 20 seconds, the plane had been losing altitude. When their traffic controllers called to see if everything was right, within 5 minutes and 20 seconds, the pilot finally said, "What have we done? We did something to the altitude," and 10 seconds later, the plane crashed. First time, as far as I know, that a jumbo airline had crashed. People were actually believing these things were invincible up till then. Pilots lost their lives. 101 people died in total because a plane lost its altitude because the pilots got concerned about a $12 light bulb. A $12 light bulb. And so many Christians have lost their spiritual altitude. They're not seeking after heavenly things. They've got all enamored with the shiny treasures down here, the $12 light bulbs, the $5 toys, the things that seem so important, but they're temporary. They pass away. Rust corrupts them, and they've lost their altitude. They've done something to the altitude they're supposed to be flying at. They're not putting godly things, heavenly things first. Look after your altitude, friends. Develop a habit of giving. It's a keystone habit. It'll help your heart stay in the right place. Your heart ends up where you put your treasure. Look after the habit. Look after the habit of giving. Pastor's going to come now and just lead us in prayer. And ask God to speak to us as we prepare to give generously on this generosity weekend.